Welcome to Lesson 15 in the C# from Start to Finish course. My name is Tim Corey, and today we're going to start working on the Create Tournament form. This is the big one. Once we get this form completed, we'll have a mostly working application. The best news is that while this is the most complex of our forms, by now we've already done most of the parts we're going to need. That means we shouldn't encounter too many issues. At least we hope not. So let's jump right in. Before we get started in the lesson, I want to remind you to subscribe to this channel. If you are subscribed, click the little bell icon and make sure you're getting the alerts when I add a new video. And while you check on that, could you also give this video a like? I know that we're just getting started, but liking a video is a simple way that you can make this course more popular, and that helps everyone. It increases the visibility of my videos on YouTube, which generates more income for me. It helps others out because they get introduced to this valuable content, and it helps you out because I'm able to produce more free videos. Okay, so let's get back to the lesson. Whenever I start a form, I like to break down the different chunks that I'm going to do. And so I review what the form does and then figure out what the logical chunks are. And right away in my review, the first thing I notice is these two boxes right here are different, and yet their labels are the same. Now that just means we have a copy-paste error, so I'm going to go ahead and resolve that before we get any further along. I'm going to change this to say prizes. And that just fixes that little issue right there. The actual label is labeled prize label, and the box is prize list box. So we're all good there. It was just the actual text right here for this label. Now, as far as the chunks that I'm going to break this up into, it's a little bit different because we're doing it on video versus you doing it yourself. Because here's the chunks if you're doing it yourself. I would populate this select team drop down first, and that'd be one chunk. Then I'd populate this list box right here, and that's another chunk. Then I'd wire up this add team, which takes whoever's in this drop down and puts them in this list box as the next chunk, because that way I can validate that this list is working. And finally, I'd wire up this list box. Now, because we're doing this on video, I'm not going to do 6 different videos for this one form. We're going to try and do it in 3. And so therefore, we're going to do all of these in one video. So we'll do a drop down, the add team, this list box, this prize box. All of these we're going to do in this first video. The next video, we'll wire up these delete buttons and the create new and the create prize buttons. We'll wire those up as well, make sure they're working. In the final video, we'll concentrate just on this create tournament button. So those are the chunks we're going to do. They're bigger chunks than I'd have you do if you're just doing it on your own, because on your own you can break it down into smaller parts and it makes a little more logical sense. So let's start with this select team dropdown. It's called select team dropdown. So we're going to go to the code for this, hit F7. And here's our code behind for our form. And the first thing I want to do is this is a list of teams. So I want a list of team model. I hit Control dot to add the using statement. Now I'll call this teams, or available team. Let's do available teams. Equals new list of teams. And what that's going to do is it's going to give us all the teams that are in the database, every one of them. And we'll put that in this list. Now, right now I have this as a equals new list of team model. We're going to go ahead and change that to either load the teams from the database or from the text file. So we'll leave it this way for now, just so we have something. And then let's work on getting that read for the team model. So we have the create team, but let's do the list of team model, get team underscore all. So it matches up, get team and create team. Get person all, get team all. So we're kind of matching the same patterns here. This is our new entry in our iData connection, which is our interface or our contract. And now let's implement that. So we'll do our control dot here. And then we'll also do our control dots in our text connector so that both are implemented. We'll come back over to the SQL connector. We'll go find this. So here's our get team all in a SQL connector. So let's first of all copy this code for get person, because it seems to function fairly consistently with what we're doing. I'll change output to be a team model instead of a person model, and we'll have to change the query to get the team model instead. Now, first of all, we need to figure out what store procedure this should be instead of SP people get all. So let's look for the SP team get all. We have an SP team get by tournament, and if we modify this to look at it, we can see that we get everything from a team and we join on the tournament entries so that we know, okay, it's this specific tournament. Well, we're not asking for a specific tournament yet. We're creating a tournament. So this isn't quite right. So we're not going to use that. Instead, we're going to create a stored procedure. We'll get rid of this stuff up top. And we'll say the name is going to be, we're going to follow the same convention. So DBO SP team underscore get all. We will have no parameters because we're getting all the teams. And for our select statement, be very simple. Select star from dbo.teams. All right, we'll put our semicolon at the end. And that's our store procedure. Very, very simple. Now, if we run this, just the select statement, we have right now one team, ID of one, and a team name of team first place. So we have one team in there. So let's create that store procedure. And we'll take that name. We're going to paste it here. And now we have a populated team model list, correct? Well, no, actually we don't. If we look at the team model, we see that we have ID, the team name, those are the things we got from the database. But then we have this list of person model called team members. We didn't get that from that SQL table. So how are we going to fill that? Well, remember that we have this other table in SQL. We have this table called team members. And if we look at this, let's select the top 1,000 rows. We see team ID of 1 for both of these. I'll zoom in here. And then the person ID is 1 and 2. So we have this linking tool that says, okay, here are the entries for this particular team. So we need to get team members get by team. So this looks like it's probably what we need. This SP team members get by team, we pass in the team ID and get back a list of people. And that sounds correct. So we need to call this store procedure. And we pass in @team ID. And how we do that over here? Well, we're going to have to loop through and call this for every team that we just downloaded. Because if we have 8 teams, each one of them needs to have that call by team ID to find out which people are a part of that team. So therefore, we're going to do a for each. For each team model, team in output. So the output right now is team model, but it doesn't have anything for that team members list. And so for each one, we're going to say team members equals connection.query, and this is a list of person model, dbo dot, there's our store procedure name, to list. And now what this does is for each team in our list of teams, we're going to query the team members list. Now, if you look at the store procedure, we're not actually returning just that, this right here. We're not returning this, just IDs, essentially. Instead, with the joins, we are returning the people. So, ID, first name, last name, email address, and cell phone number. They're people records. Therefore, we can do it right here. We can return a person model, which is ideal because we have a list of person model for the team members. So each team, we're going to run this query, and the results will get put in the team members list. Now, our output is not only our team name and ID, but also all the team members fully populated. So now get team underscore all should be correct. So now over here in the code behind for our create tournament form, instead of saying equals new list of team model, we can say global config. We'll add the using statement there. Dot connection dot get team all. Now we'll get all the teams and put them in this list of team model. Next, we need to hook up our dropdown to this list. So let's create a private void initialize lists. We're going to say in here that our lists, which we called select team dropdown dot data source equals available teams, and selected team dropdown dot display member equals, and we need to pick a display member to show. So let's look at the team model. And if you didn't notice what I did before, or didn't realize what I was doing, if you click on object like team model and hit F12, it finds that definition. So it goes right to team model. It puts it over here as a not quite open tab. It's more of a preview tab. You can say keep it open, and then it'll make it a real tab. Otherwise, this will change based upon where you need to go. So I need to pick one property to identify this team model. In this case, it's pretty simple. Team name seems to indicate exactly who we're talking about. So I'm going to copy that. And then here inside my double quotes for display member, I'm going to paste it. That way my casing is perfect, and I know that's not an issue. Now before we go any further, let's go ahead and check to make sure this part of it is working. So let's come down here to our program.cs, make sure we change this from text file back to SQL. And then we also need to change, instead of create team form, we're now on the create tournament form. If we run this, we're going to get this error. And you go, oh no, we messed something up. Well, yeah, kind of we did, but don't panic. Read the information. So additional information, which in the newer versions of Visual Studio, they fix this so that this is much more clean and it puts the real information up top. But in this case, the real information is under additional information. And it says procedure or function sp team members underscore get by team expects the parameter at team ID, which was not supplied. Well, that kind of makes sense, doesn't it? We didn't pass in the team ID, therefore we don't know which team to look up. So let's stop that. And we need to create a dynamic parameter list. So let's grab, we're just going to copy it from up here so we have the same pattern. And then we're going to say down here, let's just put it right in here. And we're going to say, instead of model dot, this is at, let's check to make sure, it's called at team ID. So I'm going to copy that. This is at team ID, and it's not model. We're inside a loop, so it's team dot ID. So we pass that in by doing comma P. All right, and that should be all we need. Let's start again and see if what happens. Nope. It says procedure or function expects a parameter at team ID, which was not supplied. Well, we passed in the P, so why is this not working? And this, again, is not the time to panic. It's time to just look at, well, what's going on here? In here, we said P, and then we gave the command type, which we didn't do down here. So let's just do that and pass it in, and this time it runs. Okay, so we needed that command type of store procedure to tell it that it's a store procedure. Now in the team list, we have nobody. That doesn't seem quite right, so let's debug this as well. This is one of those things where you get going, you're like, oh, I'm gonna nail this thing, and then this kind of thing, hits. This is natural. This is normal. The way we've been going so far, we've kind of had it too easy. And so now we're starting to see a couple of bugs and errors. And that's a good thing because it helps us debug what's going on. And those debugging skills are really important because you're going to need them every day. So in this case, I'm going to find out if I'm actually even getting teams. So I am putting my breakpoint right after I get all the teams. I'm going to put it right there. I'm going to start. And now it's already at the breakpoint. Notice the yellow highlight to say we're at the start of the for each. So let's mouse over output. And if you can see, output says it has one record. It has an ID of 1 and a team name of team first place. And no team members, which is great. That's perfect because we load those down here. So let's step into this for each. And before we start going any further, let's look at the team to make sure it is the correct team. ID of 1, team first place for the name. So yes, that's correct. We're going to add our team ID, which is 1. We're going to call and ask for a person model back. We're going to call this method. And we get back the team ID of 1, team first place, now has 2 team members. the first person, or second person, I'm sorry, is Sue Storm, and the first person is Tim Corey. So that's right. So let's keep stepping through. It's going to return output. That's good. And now I've stepped into an area that I didn't really need to. This is the other half of the class. Notice the create tournament form. This is the, we have a partial class in 2 different spots. And so this is the other half of that partial class. I'm going to step out up here, which brings me back to this creation. I can keep going. And it's actually taking me too far. I shouldn't have stepped out because it treats the partial class like it's a whole class and doesn't know one from the other. So I'm going to stop it again. And this time I'm going to go to my create tournament form and put my breakpoint at the end of the constructor. I'm going to take a breakpoint out of this for each loop and start again. And now I'm here at the end of my constructor. My available teams is 1. Team first place, ID of 1, and it has 2 people in the list, Sue Storm and Tim Corey. So my team list is correct. So why is it that my dropdown is empty? Now hopefully this doesn't take you too long, but don't panic if it does. It's one of those things where when you stare at something too long, it actually makes the problem worse, not better. And so if you ever get stuck in a point like this, one of the things I encourage is that you step away for 5 minutes and do something totally different. I play a game on my iPhone. I just pull the iPhone out, play a game. It gets my mind off of what I'm doing, which actually helps me solve the problem. I'll come back and it'll be obvious. I'll go, oh, that's what I did. In this case, the obvious is I didn't actually call this method. If you don't call the list or initialize list method, then it never initializes the data source and wires everything up. Therefore, nothing in the list. Now, team first place is in that list. So, step 1 is done. It's a little rocky. We had a little bit of an issue, but we're back on track, and we got some valuable debugging steps in along the way, and we realized that we have to make sure that we follow through on every step we're doing. When I was done here, I said, oh, I'm done. And I didn't review how this fits in with the rest of the application. Now let's tackle the next chunk. I'm going to close out everything else. So close all but this, just to kind of clear my plate. I'll probably have to repopulate it with all those tabs, but I want to at least start fresh for now. Now, the next logical step you might think is to add the team. Because we've already started working on teams, let's complete that. But, and here's the issue, we don't have anything to add to yet. There's no place for it to go. So therefore, we need to come out over to here and populate this list box. Tournament players list box. So we'll hit F7 to go to our code. We're going to say list of team model selected teams equals new list of team model. The reason it's a new list of team model is because we don't have any teams selected by default. Now, if you're thinking, man, this feels familiar. It feels like we've done this before. We have. Create team form. Select a team member, that's a person, add them to the selected person list box. So it's the same pattern as over here. It's just now with teams here versus people in the previous form. So it should feel kind of familiar, and it should follow the same basic pattern. So in the same way, we have our tournament players. Let's change that name too while we're here. It's really not tournament players, it's tournament teams. We have over here a select team dropdown. So we should have tournament teams list. That's a little more consistent with what we're doing here. So we have tournament teams list box. So down here in the initialized lists, we can say tournament teams list box dot data source equals selected teams. Tournament team list box dot display member equals, and a copy from up here, team name, and paste it down here, because these both hold a list of team model, and so their display member should be the same for both of them. And that's really it for wiring up this list box. There's nothing more to do because there is no list. So it's not like we can say, oh, yep, we're working, although we could put some dummy data in there just to be sure. But I think we're okay seeing how we only have to write 3 lines of code. I think we're okay for now. And because that was so easy, let's look at the prizes list box. That would seem like we'd have a list of prize model selected prizes equals new list of prize model. And then down here, prizes list box dot data source equals selected prizes, and then prizes list box dot display member equals that string. Let's go over to the prize model and look at the prize identifier. I would think probably place name is going to be good, although we might want to have some type of property that combines 2 or more. But for now, I think place name is good. So let's just copy this. Let's grab place name and then paste it into our quotes. And now, with that little bit of code, we've wired up these 2 list boxes. Now that they're wired up, we can come back over here and work on this button. This button's job is to take the value from here and move it over into here. So I'm going to double click to create the event. And then before I go any further, just because I know I've already done this once with the create team form, I want to see what I did to the add member button. Just to see the pattern so I know, yep, that's what I want to do. And in fact, I might even copy this code and paste it over into here and comment it out. That way I can kind of follow the same pattern for 2 reasons. One, it keeps my code consistent. That way you don't see things done 2 or 3 different ways depending on which form you're in. And 2, it helps make sure that since I have a system that works, that I use that same system, which reduces the amount of errors I have in my code. So the first thing I did was I converted my drop-down value, the selected item, to the type. So in this case, I'm going to say team model T equals team model in parens, select team dropdown dot selected item. So that takes the selected person team in the dropdown converts it back over to a team model. Since they all are team models, that's not a problem. If they weren't, it would blow up. So now I've done that, I can say if T does not equal null, we can say available teams dot remove that team. So it's not available anymore because selected teams dot add T. So it's not available anymore because it's now in the selected list. And the final thing we did was we call the wire up lists. We don't have that. Or do we? Well, we kind of do. We call it initialize lists. So let's go ahead and change that so it matches, so the pattern stays the same. But there's one more thing that we did here. In this wire up lists, we first assigned the data sources to be null. Remember that reset our lists and allowed us to rebind. And so let's do that here. I'm actually going to copy and paste. And just make sure that you do copy each time, otherwise you'll copy the previous, or you'll paste the previous one. And that wouldn't work. Okay, so now we're going to call the wire up lists to make sure that our lists have been updated. I can get rid of this comment. And now let's run this again. We only have one team, but if we add team, it moves out of here and into here. Perfect. That's exactly what we wanted. And believe it or not, the first 4 chunks of this form are done. We wired up this selected team list so it populates with all the available teams. We wired up the teams and players selected box as well as the prizes selected box. And we wired this button up that takes a person from the available list and moves them to the selected list. So that's it. That's all we had to do in this first video. 4 small chunks. And those chunks were really fairly easy. We had a couple of glitches, but they're fairly easy. And we're really quite a ways towards getting this whole form done. In the next video, we're going to wire up this create prize button. Remember, we already have the form that creates the prize, but we somehow have to call that form, get the data back, and put it in this list. Because create prize works a little bit differently in that we don't have a drop down of available prizes. We decided back in our planning stage that we weren't going to do that because we figured that prizes were pretty much specific to the tournament and wouldn't be reused. So we'll create prizes specifically for this tournament. So we'll wire this up to that form and get the data back and put it over here. We'll also wire up this right here, this button. It'll be a similar mechanism as this create prize button in that it will call that other form we just did that creates a team. And then when it comes back with a filled out team, it's going to put that team in this list. And finally, we'll wire up these 2 buttons to remove people, or remove teams and remove prizes, respectively. So that's kind of a bigger chunk, it seems like, but in a lot of ways, most of it's already done. So that's the next video. Make sure you stay tuned for that. Before you go, you'll see a link on the left to buy this course. Check out the intro video on this playlist for more information about what you get if you pay. Also, if you are ever wondering what you could do to help this channel out without paying money, I've listed 6 things that really help. I'd appreciate if you consider doing 1 or more of these. Thanks again, and don't forget to keep practicing what you learned.